The second session now is about what is going to happen to the content of books, in particularly fiction, in the next 20 years, I suppose, but and probably even just in the next year or two. So the title is Fiction, Publishing and Promotion, A Changing Landscape. And I think there's very little question that it is a changing landscape, and probably a very rapidly changing landscape. Because what we're actually looking at here is a historical process as the impact of technology on our intellectual endeavour. You know, it's not just that books are increasingly becoming fodder for television and film, but also for apps and games, and you know, the games industry is the biggest global industry now for writers. So, you know, go figure. So it's about how people are going to choose what to buy, how they find their writers, how they buy their books, what a book is, and the impact of this changing landscape on the writers themselves and on the content itself. So I'd like to introduce my very distinguished panel. Carolina Sutton is a literary agent at Curtis Brown, which is also my agency, I'm delighted to say. And she represents clients such as Alan First, Grace Dent, Maggie G, and our very own Catherine Whitehorn. Helen Garmans-Williams has worked in various publishing houses before joining Bloomsbury in 2007, where she is editorial director for fiction. And Cathy Moore is the founder and director of Cambridge WordFest, which this year celebrates its 10th anniversary. Is that
last year?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I'm out of date. And WordFest hosts about 75 events a year and has an annual audience of nearly 10,000 people. So actually, out of the panel, Cathy is the one who actually gets, you know, FaceTime with the readers. So the first question to the panel is what is a book? You know, is it sheets of paper which are bound and printed? Is it something you download onto an e-reader or tablet? Is it even an app? Is it something we can't yet envisage in terms of technology because it hasn't been invented yet? And how far will what a book is be defined by how content is going to be monetised in the future, how they actually buy the intellectual content? So if I can start at the beginning of the process with the agent.
Well, when I started in publishing, we used to laugh at the phrase monetized content because we thought it was the ugliest and anti-book, anti-literary phrase, but it's now entered the mainstream, and this is how we all speak, so it's sort of marketing speak taking over our lives. I think what we are discovering with changes in content distribution is that this kind of notion of a book of 80,000 words or 100,000 words is quite arbitrary. I mean, I spoke to an editor a few years ago and we thought, it just occurred to us that actually the reason, I mean, perhaps not a novel, because a novel kind of has its own rhythm and it often works. 80,000 words is probably quite an optimal length, but it occurred to us that a novel or a book was, the paper book, print book, was the length it was because it worked for distribution, it worked in terms of pricing, and it worked for booksellers. I mean, you could price it at a particular, you know, if you are into print publishing as opposed to digital publishing, and you write a novella in Britain, it will still be very hard to get it published because it presents a number of serious problems in terms of pricing. How do you price a novella? I mean, if it is 10 or 12.99, but it's very thin, then it will look out of place amongst all the books which are much thicker and much longer. So I think what the digital revolution is showing us is that the idea of a book being a particular shape and format is probably a kind of a slightly antiquated and obsolete notion, and we are now just exploring ideas and stories and doing all sorts of things. And people are doing things that I didn't even know existed before, like flash fiction or really being playful with format. So I just think we shouldn't probably, I mean, I love books, I love paper, I have my favorite fonts and my favorite decal edges, and I like all of that. And I imagine there are a lot of people here in the audience who are true bibliophiles, but I think as we will find out over the next years and decades, that the actual book and the format, that kind of rather defined format, will belong to the 20th century.
Yes, and hopefully to quite a few people still, and people who want to collect it. I agree with everything Carolina says, that it's a very exciting time in many respects, and that because of the digital revolution, content can come to you in so many different ways. I mean, whether it's flash fiction or indeed Amazon have just started doing singles, which they've been doing in the States for a while, but you can release short non-fiction pieces and soon to be short fiction pieces, which are not short stories. So there's an awful lot of exciting things out there. What's tricky is how to monetize it, how to get people to pay for it, because the web is such an exciting place, social media is such an exciting place, Twitter is such an exciting place. There's so much out there, but then trying to persuade people to buy it or spend money on it, which obviously is at the end of the day what most writers want and what agents want and what publishers want. I think that's the challenge for us. And in a way, the question of what a book is, on the one hand, shouldn't matter. It could be something you read on a Kindle, something you read on your mobile phone, something you read on a tablet, whatever the form is going to take. In a way, that's incredibly exciting. I think essentially people still want stories, and it's how they get to them almost doesn't matter, except, and we'll talk about this later, getting them to pay for it. Because if they're quite happy to spend £8 on a book, but they resent spending £2 on an ebook, then in a way we're all in really, really big trouble, which I think is the problem, the big problem the industry is facing right now, is how to maintain value in something that for various reasons we have allowed to be devalued so much.
And Kathy, what do you think the people who come to see real life writers think a book is?
Yeah, well, I think certainly the audiences who attend Cambridge Wordfest are a very traditional book-buying, book-loving market, and one of the things people like especially about literary festivals, I think, is the engagement with the author and indeed the opportunity to get the physical book signed at the end of the event. And that, you can't replace that with a Kindle or with an app or any of the other developments. So I think a festival market is still a traditional book market.
If I just may, there is one company which I think is really, really innovative and brilliant and works with writers just in such a fantastic and unusual ways. It's called Byliner. I don't know if you are familiar with it, but it is an electronic publisher based in the States. And they publish all sorts of short form, long form pieces. And in a way they are moving into the sort of serial and magazine territory. And it's sort of going back to the Dickensian, serialized novel idea. And I work with Margaret Atwood, who is doing a serialized novel on Byliner. It's a series called Positron. And I would absolutely recommend it. It is fantastic. The pieces, there are 3 episodes out there. The first one is called I'm Starved for You, and there is another one coming, and it's it is a novel. I mean, it is a series, and I think she wouldn't have been able to do it in any other form, because in a way, or in any other, were it not for digital publishing, I don't think she could do this, the serial. And of course, what's so fantastic is that you end up, they are self-contained pieces, but each one ends with a cliffhanger, and it's terrific fun. And I think so I think technologies open up new formats, and in a way, it seems to me that writers who are interested in what is happening in terms of digital space and retail in digital formats are not only responding to these ideas, but actually just using them. And I think that's what I would recommend that writers who want to thrive in this space do, is that see what's available and try and kind of use it for their own purposes.
And also just to point out that were we able to have our mobile phones on, you would all just have been able to tweet a recommendation that you go and read the new Margaret Atwood as it's being serialised, and hopefully a lot more people on through Twitter would then come to the market. So it's the fact it is digital then actually brings in a new marketplace, because other people on digital platforms are joining the conversation. But I'd like to look at how the changing digital landscape is affecting the publishing industry. I mean, we've seen this week that Curtis Brown's just got bigger by amalgamating with another agency, and we know that some of the big publishing companies are merging and going to stay merged. But how does this change the way in which you actually find writers and writers find you?
Shall I go first? As the publisher? Well, the strange contradiction in my life at the moment is that publishing is changing so much. Everything is changing so fast around us. And it is a changing landscape. It's more like a changing ocean, and the great tanker ship of publishing is spinning and doesn't know what to do with itself, really. But on the other hand, my job as an editor has sort of stayed the same. I happily get to read an awful lot of novels and decide if I love them and feel passionate about them, and then if I think that we can make them sell, and I get to buy them and then work with the author to hopefully make them better. And that's been the same, and I really hope that in a way that will continue to be the same. How books are coming to me is interesting, and they are nearly all coming through agents, because there are so many agents now. And in a way, if you there are so many opportunities to get agents that it seems strange to not get one. But people are coming through agents, through self-publishing their own books, I've had various authors who've done wonderful work before coming to me in terms of writing short stories, entering them for short story competitions, winning those short story competitions, putting themselves out there on the web, collecting such a body of support that it gives me a cushion when I go to my team and say, can I buy this? There are also people who have, this is in a way a different subject, but who've gone through various things like the literary consultancy, who have been edited before they come either to an agent or to us. And again, that's slightly changing the landscape because the game has been raised. I still edit afterwards quite often. The bits you missed. But so there's more and more coming through. I think there are so many avenues for writers out there, people who will help you, places to get noticed, places to get published, places to win prizes. But really, when it comes to me, my job is sort of still the same.
And there's a growth now. I mean, there's the Faber Academy, and Curtis Brown run writing courses from which presumably you then pick up the most promising people on the courses. I mean, is that a new way in?
I think, well, creative writing courses have been around for quite some time, a few decades now, so I don't think that is necessarily new. I mean, yes, I just would echo Helen's thoughts in that, you know, that sort of Chinese curse may live in interesting times. We certainly are, and it's all changing, and we have the rug pulled from under our feet on a daily basis because whole chains, book-selling chains go bankrupt and new things emerge. But actually, the job itself is still the same. We just have to work much, much, much harder to stay aware and informed of, you know, all the changes and know how to respond to them. But really, it is about receiving that great book, either going looking for it. I mean, my job is very much about, you know, trying to find writers and going to creative writing courses. But really, ultimately, it is about reading those first few chapters, be it electronically or in a manuscript format. That doesn't change, and I think that is I hope that is reassuring, because it may seem like the world outside is incredibly noisy and confusing, and lots of writers are wondering, should I be on Twitter, should I be doing a creative writing course, should I be writing some kind of online stuff, or do I need to have a blog? I mean, my answer to this is you probably don't need to do any of those things if what you write is of incredible quality. Then all you need to do is send it to an agency, and I believe the quality will prevail. You don't need any of the external stuff, although it may help you. But if you are a writer, if you're uncertain of your ability, or if you want to learn, or if you want to interact with other writers, I think it's probably the best time to be a writer who wants to learn and explore, because there's such a variety of courses and institutions and writing clubs and groups. I mean, all you probably need to do is just put it into Google, and you'll be put in touch with someone who can help you throughout the process. So I think it is probably quite encouraging. But I would certainly say, if you are worried about all the noise and the kind of fragmentation of culture, it's not really a threat to writers as I see it.
Thank you. And Kathy, how do writers come onto your radar?
Various ways. I mean, via publishing companies. I mean, just to backtrack a little. I mean, I actually think it's a very difficult time to be a writer currently. I mean, they have to, you know, negotiate the various mediums. But there are there are, you know, hundreds of aspiring writers, hundreds of people working on their first draft, and to actually find a voice, find a place, find an outlet, I think is increasingly difficult. I mean, literature, in terms of art subsidy, I mean, literature is the most underfunded aspect of the arts, and therefore I think any outlet for the art, for literature is excellent. I mean, we've all seen Les Miserables, maybe you have recently, and you may love it or hate it, but actually it's something else which is bringing literature to the masses. You know, it's difficult for young writers coming up. I mean, there are creative writing courses. Writers come to me. So increasingly during the week, I get, I don't know, 10, maybe 20 emails from aspiring writers wanting to come and do their book at the festival. It's a book they've maybe self-published, or they may not even be published. They just want to come and read their work. Young poets come along, and generally I don't program people like that. We've always had to create a debut writers panel to champion young writers, but they always come from publishers. So the publishers have done the sifting. I wouldn't do the sifting.
So for the future of literary festivals, and they too are growing. There must be one sort of, you know, of some size or quality sort of almost every weekend.
Crowded market.
But you've got to actually have a physical book.
I think so. I mean, for the first time this year, I don't think I've admitted it to anybody publicly. I did think that actually I can see a time when I may invite somebody who's only done an e-book.
Interesting.
Very well done.
Yeah, I know.
But on the other hand, presumably somebody who has made a big enough splash with an e-book to come to your attention has probably been picked up by an agent or a publisher. Is that not probably true?
Well, actually, I mean, that is no longer a kind of polarized, it's no longer a dichotomy, because publishers are now starting ebook only imprints. So I think last week, an announcement from 2 weeks ago from Little Brown, there was an announcement from them saying that they were going to start a literary fiction ebook only imprint called Blackfriars, I think.
That's right, yeah.
And that is new because so far in my experience, self-publishing has been belonged very much to genre publishing, and there's a real reason for it, because the problem with self-publishing, or the greatest challenge of self-publishing, is, to use another ugly buzzword, discoverability, which is what publishers are talking about, and that's a word you hear if you go to publishing conferences. That's the biggest challenge, because it's very easy to make hundreds of thousands of books available online, but how do people find them? How do you become noticed? So, and what follows is that books that are written into a particular genre are much easier to find, because if it's about metadata, it's about actually describing the book. So if you put romance or erotica or thriller, your book will come up in the search, whereas what do you put for literary fiction? Profound? I mean, it's just very hard to find that word. So you need to find other ways of making yourself noticed. But it's it's reassuring and interesting that publishers are sort of trying to, I think literary fiction needs a lot more marketing and publicity support. For genres, there are great communities, and I think communities, I wish there were, the kind of community of readers for literary fiction was greater and more loyal, because this is what we need. I mean, we need people chatting and tweeting and...
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. I think the big successes, the great big self-published ebooks, whether it's E.L. James or any of the not that many others which go on to be absolutely huge, have all been genre fiction, because they tap into communities. I mean, E.L. James talks about, she went to the Twilight community with her book that started off being vampires and ended up being bondage. which is a fine line. And that's one of the great opportunities that because of social networking and the way the world is today, there are these communities out there and you can tap into them and they really go for it. They like this, they want more of the same. But for literary publishers, and Bloomsbury is a literary publisher, so we don't really do genre fiction. We're not terribly good at this. It is a challenge because, as you say, you can't just say this is a deep, profound, beautiful novel because those buzzwords are not going to attract many people on Google. But I think also that's why increasingly prizes are important, and prizes more than ever, and things like the Richard and Judy Book Club and TD Book Clubs and things like that to help people through all the chatter. And as you say, there are so many unpublished novelists. There's also so many who are published, and my challenge, our challenge as publishers is we take on these beautiful, wonderful novels and you put them out there, and it's absolutely terrifying. There are 160,000 new books published last year, and we keep almost increasing the number of books being put out there, and how you get anyone to notice them is a real challenge. And as Carolina says, in a way, literary publishing needs more marketing, but literary publishing tends not to sell in the same amount, so you can't afford to pay for the marketing, so then we have to try and find clever ways to do it. And as more and more people become net savvy and Twitter savvy, yes, it is actually. My marketing department would kill me if I didn't say it is quite important for authors to be on Twitter, if they can be, and have websites and Facebook pages and talk to readers, if they can do it genuinely. I know it's horrible if they actually don't want to do that at all, but that is a way of communicating with the reader. But everybody's on Twitter, everybody's on Facebook, so then how do you cut through that swathing and get people to notice them?
I mean, one example recently where it was to do with price that brought someone to the fore. Someone, Hilary Boyd, who